so we all have heroes. When did you meet yours? When did they talk to you? I'm here today representing a part of San Francisco where I grew up, where I was raised, not the Western Addition, not NOPA, not Filmo, but Filmo. That is where I'm from, and I have some stories to tell you. I was a 5-year-old little girl, and there was an organization that still stands called Booker T. Washington Community Center. And there was an angel who worked there. Miss Pierce is what we called her, Alicia Pierce. Miss Pierce came every day with this commitment to teach Black children movement. And she looked like Debbie Allen, but with a face like Billie Holiday, and she wore a leotard, and she was fine. And I remember the first day she lined the little Black girls up. We had little beads and barrettes. She lined us up to show us some of the basic forms of West African dance. And she looked at me, and my glasses were about this tall on a little bitty face. And she said, "Baby, stand right behind me so you can see me." And I stood right behind her, and the music started, and a brother over on the left was playing the drums. And while I saw her, I couldn't keep up, and so I ran. I ran and I left that small space in that big gym. She came to me later that day, and I will never forget. And she held my little face, and she looked right in those huge glasses, and she saw clearly the opaque cataract in one of my eyes, and she said, "Forever and ever, people will tease you. They will shun you. But baby girl, understand that as a dancer, as a student of movement, when I fall, I get up. And it's not about strength," she said. "It's physics. I have no choice. I keep moving." Let's talk about movement, and let's give Ms. Price a hand. God rest her soul. Every single day in this country, we feel it right now. We feel it so very deep in our marrow. We are under attack, and attacks on our family and our friends and ourselves come by the way of congressional mandates, by cabinet appointments. You feel it deep in your marrow. So I ask you, what is movement? Is it simply the idea of a person moving from one place to another, or is it a collection of people, of places coming together in pursuit of activating ideas and goals, whether they be political, economic, or spiritual? I ask you the question, but I have a couple of stories to tell you, hopefully to inspire your answer. I was born and raised here in this city, a daughter of this city, in Fillmore, where it was vibrant. That organization that I called on earlier, Booker T. Washington, was a physical and economic and spiritual and political place for Black children to free themselves. We learned, we danced, we sung, and I don't ever know. I think about San Francisco today. Do children know the Black national anthem? Well, we had a political home where we learned how to be Pan-African people in this city. I got my politics there before crack crippled that community, and before redevelopment crippled that community, and before government turned a blind eye on the amazing, amazing culture that had been built for 30 years post-World War II. So here I am. I'm 40, 2 kids and a dead husband later, and a president who hates everything about my mother's story. I was asked to talk about movement today, so I want to talk about mobility. When I received in a small hospital room with 7 coats wrapped around my body with little heads, you know, when you get life-threatening organizational information about life or death. They don't look like doctors, they just have little heads and they have long coats, and they told me my husband was gonna die. I thought of Miss Pierce, and I had to keep moving. My fingers continued to write down this crazy diagnosis, and it was then that I knew that life would never, ever be the same. And while they told me we would get 3 months, we got 2.5 years. I lost him, I buried him, and when we did, we just kept moving like Miss Pierce said. But it was movement, people who gathered together collectively in pursuit of my life and my children's life, post that beautiful man that I married, that I decided to really think about mobility. When Kevin died, and we lost everything, including his car that he drove, I've never driven a car in my life, I decided, baby girls, we are going to actually live. Not only get through this, we are going to live. I'm going to do everything possible to continue this 20+ years legacy of activists that I've been in for a very, very, very long time. I decided, you know what, it's time to think differently. I was on the BART train one day with grocery bags and no credit cards, with a small child, and thinking about what I could do to just move. Not because I was strong, because the laws of physics and these babies gave me no choice. And I thought of the lack of mobility that I had without my partner in my life, literally. That if this BART train stopped right now, we couldn't get to school or to work. Hell, in that moment, I decided I wanted to be like Rosa Parks and take transportation to its knees. Because for those who don't have the privilege of mobility, they needed a Harriet Tubman. So I decided to run for BART Board. And not because I wanted to be an elected official. My life has been about moving people and myself and my family towards a vision of racial justice, of equity, to fight for everything we have as the claws of capitalism and racism continue to take it away. Why BART Board? Why mobility? Why the now? Thinking about Rosa and thinking about Miss Pierce and thinking about ways in which women of color have taken over systems and made them better. So yes, I decided to run for an office that no one had ever even heard of. But when I learned that we had a $3.3 billion budget, and yes, civil rights geniuses in the 60s understood that transportation was a human right. They understood that transit deserts kept people from working and going to school and getting medical care and living. And so I took on this crazy thing with a dead husband and 2 babies, but with the force and fortitude of my foremothers, and thought about changing the direction of how we look at how we get to where we need to be. I won in 19 cities in 3 counties, each city by 20 points. For the first time ever, on the BART Board of Directors, there is a young woman of color, a Black woman, who is transit dependent. Movement. The Nagua say Olin. Do we keep moving? Do we do things that we are so scared of? Do we follow the advice of our foremothers and say, it's not about strength, but I need to throw my leg out of this bed today because my survival and the survival of the people who have prayed for me give me no choice. We are here, and we are the prayers indeed of our great-great-grandmothers. If, my friends, you cannot run, whether spiritually or physically, you are bound by the conditions that surround you. If you can't run, like that good preacher from Georgia said, I ask you to walk. And if you cannot walk in this moment, I ask you and beg you to crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Thank you.